Incredible rescue exposed. 7 days in freezing mud. Transformed a trapped horse's fate forever. Sarah gripped the steering wheel, her knuckles white as the icy road threatened to swallow her car whole. She glanced at the rearview mirror, catching a glimpse of Oliver, his small face still alight with childhood wonder despite the weight of their reality. Every day was a struggle, balancing her demanding role as a veterinary technician with caring for her son, whose illness illuminated every facet of her existence, casting shadows over her dreams. The mounting medical bills loomed larger, suffocating her hopes like the heavy blanket of snow covering the world outside. A deep breath punctured the silence. The cold settled in her bones, gnawing at her resolve. What choice did she have? She had to work, to provide, to keep food on the table. But as she navigated the twisting path, a glimpse of movement in the adjacent field caught her attention. Buck. The once beloved horse, now trapped in freezing mud on a neighboring neglected farm, stirred memories of her grandfather, the values of hard work and loyalty coursing through her veins. She hesitated, the pull of responsibility warring with the urgent need for a paycheck. As Joe, her boss, lectured about devotion to their job, the words became muffled. In that moment, the choice was sharp against the dull ache of her reality. Should she abandon her safety to save a creature in distress? The weight of her convictions pushed against the dark weight of her fears. What if she failed? What if, in helping Buck, she risked it all? Her son's comfort, her routine, her security. Then the thought of Oliver emerged, his wide, admiring eyes sparkling with belief in her strength. The image ignited a spark within her. Gathering her resolve, she decided Buck needed her. She texted a handful of friends, imploring their help. Together they could storm the fight against the snow and mud. Together they could bring the horse home. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. With ropes and a collective heart, they pressed on, fueled by determination and shared history. But as they neared Buck, a dark horizon rolled in, the blizzard clawing at the edges of their hope. The snow turned heavy and relentless, swirling around them like a spectral force, isolation creeping around her like a suffocating shroud. Each gust of wind whipped Sarah's skin, revealing a deeper uncertainty within. Could they save Buck? Could she save herself from the fears that rattled deep within? Every sound of their breath filled her ears, each shiver magnifying her internal chaos. The weight of her son's trust pressed against her chest. The truth pierced her thoughts. Was this rescue worth the risk? The biting cold mirrored the tension in her heart. Failure felt inevitable, palpable. They wrestled against the elements, their spirits weighed down by the growing storm, every setback freezing her resolve. Sarah felt alive, yet trapped, faced with her deepest fears as Buck struggled in the mud, their fates now bound by the blizzard, by a relentless fight against despair. As snow enveloped them, she asked herself, was she truly strong enough for this? Or would the storm consume them all? Reaching Buck felt like chasing a mirage. Every step seemed heavier than the last, as if the snow was laced with lead. Sarah's vision blurred with frustration. The storm's ferocity snatched her focus, transforming the world around her into a swirling white haze. Each gust of wind howled like the tortured cries of lost souls, and doubt clawed at her gut, gnawing away at her resolve. Breathe, she whispered to herself, the words swallowed by the wind. What had begun as a stirring call to heroism now twisted into a burden. The ropes in her hands felt like chains, tightening with every pulse of anxiety. She was two people at once, the mother determined to save her son from financial ruin, and the woman who felt an undeniable duty to a creature in agony. Her friends grasped the ropes, echoing her determination outward, and for a moment, resolve surged within her. But with the blizzard's howl came the stark reminder that each second spent fighting for Buck might mean lost time at work, time she could not afford. She thought of Oliver, tucked away at home, likely worried about the diminishing warmth in their house, the quiet suffering behind the curtains, and the bills that grew more overwhelming like the snow draping over the landscape. "Just a little closer," she urged, her voice melding into the wind. Their joint effort drew them nearer, Buck's dark silhouette emerging briefly from behind the curtain of white. The sight ignited a fresh wave of hope. He was alive, but time was against them. The horse's frantic movements created deep ruts that swallowed him further into the earth. "Pull hard!" she shouted, her authoritative command breaking through the storm for her friends. In this dire moment, she seized her role as a leader, an unexpected position that illuminated her inner strength. As they heaved, she found herself the fulcrum of purpose, embodying every lesson she'd gained throughout her life. But with every pulse of energy she expended, a familiar shadow crept in. What if the struggle was in vain? What if Buck succumbed to fate, and they delayed their own survival in the process? She shook her head from the thoughts, refusing to let despair anchor her. With a roar of furious wind, the blizzard answered her thoughts, lifting her feet off the ground and tossing her backward. For one fateful moment, she felt weightless, the thrill of release endangered by the impending ground barreling towards her. "Sarah." A voice sliced through the storm. A friend, perhaps. She landed awkwardly, the snow breaking the cruel fall but leaving her breathless. There was no time for pain. Buck was wrestling, and every second felt like an eternity. She scrambled upright, determination ignited anew. This time, she pushed her body through the cold, moving without hesitation, almost instinctively, diving deep into the moment. Her legs pounded against the snow, and with each step, she discovered fragments of capability stirring from within. In that struggle, Sarah realized she had become more than just notes in an account, a ticking clock of bills, or a mother caught in survival mode. She was a force stronger than her surroundings, a protector ready to face the tempest. As they closed in on Buck, she caught a glimpse of her own reflection in the ice. A woman driven, not broken. But while clarity dawned on her, the storm's fury reached a language of its own, warning of impending consequences and trials beyond the physical realm. They were nearly within reach, ropes taut and hands steady. Just as hope surged, the ground beneath Buck began to give way, deep fissures cracking the earth open, threatening a fate darker than they imagined. The moment of truth had arrived. Would their determination be enough to pull him out before it was too late? Or was the weight of destiny simply too heavy? With blood pumping, Sarah took a deep breath, steeling herself for the ultimate confrontation, not just with the storm, but with her own doubts. Would this rescue be the pivotal moment that defined her? The physical world narrowed to a singular point of focus. Buck needed them, and failure was not an option. As she tugged at the ropes, Sarah felt the tension between her desires and the realities of their situation. Each muscle in her body screamed, but there was also a burgeoning realization lurking beneath the surface. This was not just about Buck. It was about her, about transcendence, about tapping into a well of strength she never knew existed. "Keep pulling," she shouted, grit lacing her voice. Her friends, motivated by her urgency, responded with renewed vigor. She could sense their belief coalescing with her own. Each effort became a collective heart-pounding rhythm, a desperate beat against the overwhelming force of nature. But doubt seeped into the creases of her resolve, whispering venomous half-truths. What if they succeeded only to face another insurmountable hurdle later? Each interaction with Buck might take them closer to a future of responsibility, a looming cloud of debt and worry that threatened to bury her family under layers of stress. Was this one act of valor enough to counterbalance that? As they drew nearer, Buck's eyes met hers, wide and pleading. There was an unmistakable spark of trust reflected in them. That gave her pause. In that moment, she was not just a mother or a caregiver, she was a symbol of hope. She remembered the lessons learned in her small-town community, about perseverance, about the importance of collective purpose. But here, amid howling winds and blinding snow, the ethos of her upbringing took on a larger significance. Almost there. With every heave forward, Sarah abandoned hesitation. In these moments, her body became a vessel of action. She no longer just thought about her son's fears or the anxiety of their financial struggles. Instead, she harnessed the energy around her, channeling it toward an unyielding commitment to save Buck and herself. The ropes began to move. Inch by inch they advanced, wresting Buck from the abyss of snow. Yet, as he was pulled closer, nature retaliated with ferocity. A loud crack echoed through the winds, snapping Sarah's concentration. It signaled an impending avalanche, arching forth a silent threat. "Get back!" she yelled, instinctively drawing her friends away from the shifting terrain. But the chaos erupted as the earth beneath Buck continued to succumb, a life-threatening balance between hope and destruction. The world narrowed again, but this time it was not just about Buck. It encapsulated the weight of her life choices, her struggles, and her promises to Oliver. The realization revealed a new urgency. If she could save Buck, she could save herself from an unyielding cycle of fear that had gripped her. "Focus," she commanded, racing against both the storm and time. They had to try harder, faster. Decisions had to be made before it all crumbled beneath them. As Buck reared away from the chasm's edge, Sarah felt the tautness of the ropes meld into her hands, her grip acting as a line between life and doom. The moment stretched unbearable, the ground thrumming underneath her, a reminder of humanity's fragility against nature's will. Then, in a battle against both external calamity and her deepest fears, Sarah made her choice. With a determined pulse, she yanked the ropes hard again, her body echoing the desperate movement, driven by the kind of emotion that breaks barriers. With one final heave, they surged forward together, recoiling back just enough to pull Buck from the brink. But she had no idea whether this act would be enough to shift the tides for her family, or whether she was simply stoking the flames of an even greater crisis. The storm howled louder, casting a deafening sound around them, and all Sarah could feel was the weight of impending choice hovering before her. Would this temporary victory catalyze a larger future, or would they be left to weather the consequences of every decision made in desperate haste? As Buck's figure broke free from the grasp of fate, the answer hung palpably in the air, tantalizingly close, yet frighteningly out of reach. When Buck collapsed onto solid ground, gasping for breath, Sarah felt the weight of the world lift, at least temporarily. The adrenaline pulsed through her veins, allowing her to bask in the fleeting glow of triumph. Yet, as Buck's grateful eyes met hers, a mirror to her inner turmoil, the euphoria began to dim. The storm continued to swirl around them, relentless. With Buck secured but vulnerable in his exhaustion, Sarah was struck by an acute awareness of her own limits. What if this was the high point of her efforts? Did saving Buck merely signify a temporary win, a distraction from the looming challenges ahead? She let uncertainty corrode her momentary victory. "Are you okay?" she asked Buck, kneeling beside him, her voice softer now despite the howling winds. He nodded, though pain still lined his features. Her protective instincts flared as she brushed the snow from his fur, but beneath that instinct lay deeper memories, painful reminders of her own life choices that had led her here for both herself and her family. The tumultuous landscape surrounding her became painfully symbolic, a reflection of her doubts. The mountain had offered no respite, now mocking her as the cold seeped through her clothing and the icy wind chilled her bones. In that harsh environment, she became acutely aware of the tempest within herself. What if each choice she made thereafter was another plunge into the unknown? Did heroism here equate to disaster later, or was it possible for this moment to lay the groundwork for growth? The silence of her thoughts was shattered by Buck's moan as he shifted uncomfortably on the ground. "Buck, let's get you out of here," she urged, and with each passing moment she felt the weight shift from action to reflection. The stark realization settled upon her. She was just as trapped by her past, her decisions, as Buck had been in the snow. Her friends rallied around, concern etched onto their faces. "We should head back, get him somewhere safe," one of them urged. "Not yet," she countered, her voice laced with urgency. "He needs us to get him back up on his feet." The immediate needs of the present clashed with the creeping anxiety about the future. For a split second, she allowed fear to edge into her thoughts again. The potential costs of their actions loomed larger and larger: medical expenses, long-term care for Buck, her own family's struggle for stability. But deep down, she felt an ember of resolve. This wasn't just about Buck now. It was about proving to herself that she could handle the fallout of decisions made out of love and loyalty, not fear. Taking a few deep breaths, she glanced back at her friends, their expressions a mix of confusion and admiration. "Let's do this together," she said, voice steady. "We'll figure out the next steps after we ensure he's taken care of." As they worked to support Buck, lifting him slowly and carefully, Sarah felt each movement forge a new path. They operated like a well-oiled machine, driven by a sense of purpose that ignited her spirit, spurred by an understanding that growth was often found in the struggle. The act of focusing on Buck, on the tangible help they could provide, began to purge her lingering fears. Each careful step they took forward became a testament to determination, opening her eyes to the reality that overcoming trials, though daunting, could lead to unexpected strength. But just as they staggered a few paces away from the scene of chaos, a loud rumble echoed ominously in the distance, snapping her back to a state of heightened alert. "Was that?" One friend started, turning to Sarah, questions swirling in their eyes. The likelihood of another avalanche? A collapse of everything she had just fought for? The ground shifted beneath her, and with it, uncertainty settled into her bones again. The stakes had ascended. Would this newfound clarity carry her through the next challenge, or was she about to face an even bigger test of her resilience? As she stood on the precipice of decision, the impending threat loomed larger than life, ready to shape her journey ahead. The wind screamed around Sarah, carrying warning notes from the mountains that seemed to reverberate deep within her chest. The rumble promised danger, and as she steadied herself, questions swirled, demanding answers she barely grasped. How much farther could they push? What limits would she need to confront for Buck and for herself? "Let's move," she commanded, gathering her friends' hesitant expressions into a fierce resolve. Each step felt heavier now, not just from the physical burden of the still emaciated horse, but also from the weight of her internal struggles. Buck was relying on her, and in that trust she found herself at a crossroads of belief and doubt. Shifting the way they held Buck, she focused on their shared goal. "We make this happen," she urged, breaking through her apprehension. It was a mantra now, a lifeline holding her in this moment. Focus, act, move. The frustration with her thoughts simmered beneath the surface. Questioning her capabilities, her leadership, they all felt like familiar nagging doubts that refused to be silenced. The unrelenting storm seemed to echo those thoughts, as if nature itself conspired to remind her of all the times she faltered. As they navigated the snowy terrain, Sarah allowed herself a glance back at Buck, its calm facade in stark contrast to her turmoil. Why hadn't he succumbed to fear? Maybe his resolve could become her own. The sight of his eagerness to overcome the battle, even in desolation, fed something inside her, an understanding that resilience was often a choice rather than an innate quality. "Watch your step." One of her friends stumbled over hidden rocks concealed by ice, jolting Sarah's mind into action. If they could risk their safety, what made her think she couldn't embrace a bit more chaos? The rumble returned, more fierce this time, reverberating against the mountainside. Panic fluttered within her, darting like a creature caught between instinct and fear. What if Buck couldn't make it after all, no matter how much they pushed forward? The whiplash of despair threatened to uproot the fortitude she had built around herself. Just when she allowed the thought to seep into her resolve, a surge of anger compelled her to quash it. "Stay close," she yelled against the wind, galvanizing her resolve. She was not a mere bystander in this powerful drama. She was an active participant, a force within the tale that required a balance of intellect and instinct. The echoes of her decisions intertwined with every step they were taking, growing from stillness to movement. As they reached a safer area, she sensed the shifting pressure of the situation, an almost tangible buildup of momentum. "The cabin is just a few minutes away," one friend breathed heavily. Relief began to seep in, but with it came caution. What if they weren't out of the woods just yet? Movement turned to certainty as they began to channel their remaining energy, pushing through the last stretch of uncertainty. They wouldn't be safe until Buck was inside, tended to, and varmints of worry could be settled. Finally hitting the threshold of the cabin with Buck half-dragged between them, Sarah fought against the overwhelming fatigue threatening to swamp her. She thought of her family waiting, the laughter, the love, all of it tied intricately into her choices. Could she truly deliver Buck's safety while maintaining the bond with her own kin? The realization hammered hard. This moment wasn't merely about saving a horse, nor was it just about her resolve. It was intertwined with personal conviction, reflection, and growth. She began to see possibilities through the fog of doubt. As she settled Buck on a warm blanket inside the cabin, the relief melted into a more profound determination. But the imminent realization hit her with a sharp pang. The avalanche was not just a physical threat. The real danger simmered beneath the surface of her choices, still yet to come. How could she lead those around her if she was battling uncertainty herself? The answer was growing closer, and the next challenge was about to test the very core of who she believed herself to be. "Sarah," one friend called, breaking her concentration. "Look outside." Those frantic words shifted her world once more, daring her to confront the greater storm still brewing on the horizon. Sarah turned, heart pounding, her pulse keeping rhythm with the wild wind battering the cabin walls. She shoved the door open, squinting against the icy gust. What she saw sent a jolt of fear and clarity through her body. Outside, a wall of snow cascaded down the mountainside, a deadly torrent moving swiftly toward the cabin. The avalanche reflected her internal chaos, a menacing reminder of all she feared, failure and recklessness wrapped up in an unstoppable force barreling toward them. "Get Buck!" she barked, a newfound authority in her voice. The urgency pulled her friends into motion, despite their initial shock. They had just fought to save one life. Now, they needed to protect their own. "Sarah, we can't leave Buck here," one friend protested, desperate to ensure the horse was safe first. "Leave him now," she commanded, digging deep into her resolve. "We can't risk it." As they rushed Buck further inside, Sarah's mind raced. She was drawn into a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. How could she hold the weight of responsibility both for Buck and her friends? Each choice felt monumentally significant. Failure was unacceptable. Yet beneath the pressure, she discovered something surprising. Her fundamental desire to lead had ignited like a flame seeking oxygen. The rumble continued, echoing ominously through the cabin. "We need to barricade this door," she urged, adrenaline fueling her movements. They quickly piled furniture against the entrance, hands working in a frenzied yet determined way. The chaos of the moment stripped Sarah of distractions. Every action had consequences, and for the first time, she learned the raw power of her voice combined with her decisiveness. With Buck settled on a thick blanket, she turned to her friends, their eyes wide with worry. "We're all in this together. If we stay focused, we can get through this." Her words felt stronger than she anticipated. "What if it breaks through?" one friend asked, voice trembling. "This is our home right now, and we will protect it." Sarah breathed out, grounding herself. She felt the warmth of her conviction settle. Moments passed like hours as they huddled in the dim light of the cabin. The lumber creaked under the weight of the storm outside, but inside, the air was thick with a different kind of tension. It was an unspoken challenge. Could she lead them through this? Did she even believe it herself? As they listened to the roaring chaos outside, Sarah found a fragility in herself that she had never acknowledged before. Could she truly harness the leader within? She wasn't just facing physical threats. She was confronting her deepest fears, the fear of inadequacy, the fear of leading those she cared about straight into danger, the fear of failing Buck, her friends, and herself all at once. With resolve building inside of her, she stood taller, moving to the window. She peered out and saw the bright swirl of white. It was fearsome, yet beautiful in its ferocity. "This storm is an avalanche of uncertainty," she murmured to herself, understanding that mastering her fear was key to navigating their perilous situation. The storm paralleled her growth. It was ugly but transformative. As shadows danced with the flickering light of the cabin, she turned back to her friends, her voice steady. "We've made it this far, but if we're to survive what's next, we need a plan." The steely determination in her eyes evoked a flicker of hope in her friends. They needed each other now more than ever, and with every confrontation with the unknown, Sarah gripped tighter to that realization. But before she could outline her strategy, a crash echoed, louder than anything they had faced. The avalanche pushed against their makeshift barricade, and Sarah froze. Could she truly guide them through this storm raging both outside and within? The severity of the moment snapped her resolve, leaving her with the chilling understanding that the real fight was just beginning. The ground shuddered beneath the weight of the avalanche. Sarah's heart thudded against her ribcage, a relentless drumbeat reminding her of the urgency pressing down with lethal gravity. Her mind raced through the options, but they felt fleeting, as unstable as the snow outside. The fear of their impending doom clawed at her resolve, amplifying questions she had long ignored. "What if we can't hold it back?" one friend whispered, eyes wide with terror, mirroring Sarah's own tenuous grip on the situation. "We can't think like that," Sarah snapped, surprising herself with the intensity of her voice. In that moment, she recognized a kernel of power within her that had always been shadowed by self-doubt, an intrinsic need to shield her friends from despair, just as she shielded them from the snow. She leaned against the barricade, feeling the tremors resonate through her body. "We need to find tools, something we can use as a last line of defense." As her friends began to scour the cabin for anything that could fortify their barricade, Sarah glanced toward Buck, now huddled painfully close to the hearth, his large eyes full of trust and anxiety. How could she ensure both human and animal safety in this calamity? Suddenly, a realization hit her. If she could assess the cabin's vulnerabilities and craft a more coherent plan, perhaps she could avert the chaos. She started pacing, thoughts sparking like wildfire, clarifying strategies as she spoke aloud. "We'll need to create more barriers. If the door breaks, we can funnel the snow away from us." Her friends started to nod, their initial panic dissolving into a semblance of focus as she outlined a few rudimentary tactics. She felt their energy shift, a flicker of hope igniting amidst the tension. But beneath her newfound authority lay an echo of doubt. Could a few makeshift measures truly safeguard them from the relentless force of nature? The weight of Buck's survival pulled at her conscience. What if she led them into a trap instead of safety? Swallowing hard, she locked eyes with her closest friend, John. "We have to be ready for anything. If it breaks through." Her voice faltered and she paused, taking a breath to regain her composure. "Then we need to find a way to escape. Together." "Escape?" John echoed, disbelief painted across his features. "Yes, there's a back door, but we need to hold this front one first. We can't let the snow rush in." A plan took shape. She felt the resolve in her body, affirmative and electrifying. "We'll create a diversion, and if it breaches..." The crash came again. The barricade shuddered, furniture sliding against each other. The moment froze. They shared a collective glance of panic, pushing Sarah's determination to the forefront. The confrontation loomed large, testing every ounce of her newfound strength. "Listen," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "Our fear is paralyzing, but we are stronger together." Their eyes met hers. Somewhere in the chaos, they believed in her vision. As they joined forces, the attic above suddenly groaned, a new sound reverberating through the cabin. For a brief moment, they all turned to the source, dread pooling in Sarah's stomach. What if the snow was finding a way in an unexpected manner? With a sharp focus, she turned back toward her friends. "This next step is crucial. If we can't control what's coming, we'll have to pivot and adjust rapidly when the time comes. We cannot lose ourselves in fear." But just as they began to take action, the cabin lurched violently, sending them sprawling. Sarah gasped, feeling her heart drop. The storm outside roared, a beast unmasked, ready to unleash its fury. As they fought desperately to regain their balance against the chaotic shift, Sarah realized that leading was not merely about issuing orders. It was about flexibility, adaptability, and above all, unyielding resilience. Yet the deeper revelations about her character ebbed and flowed like the snow swirling outside. But would this moment of clarity be enough? In the midst of her realization, an ominous rattle echoed from above. "Did you hear that?" John's voice broke through the whirlwind, panic creeping back in. Her heart thundered with a mix of fear and determination. The real test was approaching rapidly, and the true nature of leadership was yet to be determined. Could she harness her inner strength to guide them through the storm's treacherous grip? The next decision lingered at the edge of her consciousness, remaining tantalizingly out of reach. The rumble from the attic intensified, mingling with the howling wind outside, a sinister symphony orchestrating their impending fate. As the cabin quaked, Sarah felt the raw weight of responsibility anchoring her to the floor. Her fingers tightened around the edge of the wooden table, their last physical barrier against nature's fury. This was not just a test of strength, it was a crucible to refine her very essence. "Focus," she commanded, more to herself than her friends. Instinctively, she drew upon the reservoir of determination fueled by the urgency of their plight. How often had she stepped back in the past, allowing fear to keep her silent? No more. The thought propelled her forward, rendering her pulse a steady drumbeat of resolve. "Let's move the couch against the door. If it breaks through, we'll need that extra weight. John, grab the chairs, they'll slow it down," she directed, her voice slicing through the rising panic. The clarity in her instructions ignited action, her friends snapping to attention as they began to shift furniture with newfound urgency. Each scrape of the wood against the floor reverberated through the tension-laden air. She felt the adrenaline surge as she led the efforts. The sensation marked a departure from her former self, one who shied away from command. Perhaps this adversity was revealing strength she had long buried beneath layers of self-doubt. The truth began to crystallize. Leadership wasn't a mantle bestowed, but forged in the fire of necessity and personal commitment. "Keep an eye on Buck," she urged, casting a glance toward the trembling dog. His blind trust tugged at her heart, stirring memories of his loyalty during moments of her own uncertainty. Protecting him felt like an extension of protecting herself, the simplicity of their bond grounding her amid the chaos. Suddenly the air shifted. An unsettling crack echoed from above as if the cabin itself trembled in anticipation of what loomed beyond its walls. Sarah's stomach twisted. The real challenge was not merely keeping the snow out, it was navigating the uncertainty of the unknown. "We might need to act fast," she warned, her voice taut. "Prepare for whatever comes next. Our escape route is just as important as holding the barricade." The others exchanged glances, unspoken fears coiling in the silence of their shared acknowledgement. A wave of clarity washed over Sarah, amplifying the urgency of their situation. It was more than survival. It was about defying fate itself, rewriting the narrative with each calculated move. In that moment of heightened awareness, she realized the importance of adaptability. This was a living ordeal, a sculpture of chaos that would demand continuous reshaping. Her mind shifted, her focus sharpening as strategies tumbled and churned like the snow outside. Within her, a profound understanding emerged. Real leadership would require not just planning, but the ability to pivot swiftly, to mold responses to the shifting tides of adversity. And the weight of such a realization bore down upon her, both terrifying and liberating. "Once we secure the door, we split up," she instructed, a firm determination settling over her like armor. "John, you take the back door. It might be our best chance. If there's space, you can slip out and find help while we keep the front held." The class of defiance in her decision set the stage for resolve, not just hers, but contagious among her friends. They began to strategize in earnest, each truly engaging, their individual skills melding into a coherent unit. Dialogue sparked, shifting the atmosphere from paralysis to activation. But as they hoisted the last chair against the door, another sinister rumble cascaded from above, followed by a disconcerting silence. Sarah's heart sank, dread pooling like ice in her veins. "What was that?" she whispered, voice tight, redirecting her gaze towards the attic once more. Every instinct screamed that they were running out of time. Had they done enough? Had they truly prepared for what could shatter their already fragile world? "Support each other no matter what happens," she sighed, adopting a tone that mingled encouragement with conviction, savoring this rare moment of certainty among chaos. The next decision loomed colossal and unwavering, like the ancient trees standing against the storm. Sarah sensed destiny waiting with bated breath, anticipating either her triumph or failure. As another crash echoed above, accompanied by a shower of dust falling from the rafters, she knew one truth above all. The time for action was no longer upon the horizon. They were at the precipice of life-altering choices, and soon, she'd need to leverage everything she had uncovered within herself. Glancing at her friends, Sarah hardened her resolve. Could she truly become the leader they needed, one who could forge a path forward in the darkened fury of the storm? The line between survival and merely existing blurred dangerously close. The moment was at hand, raw and unyielding. And amid it all, she felt an intoxicating sense of determination rise within her. But would her newfound strength falter when faced with the spectral entity lurking just above? Was this just the beginning? The rumbling ceased, replaced by an uncanny stillness that weighed heavily on Sarah's chest. Adrenaline coursed through her veins, a stark contrast to the icy dread pooling deep within. Every nerve ending screamed for her to take action, to push against the encroaching shadows. The moment hung in the air, precarious yet pregnant with potential. Let's divide. Her voice broke the silence, commanding attention once more. Someone needs to monitor the windows in case we can see any help coming. I'll take the attic stairs. I need to know what's making that noise, and if it poses an actual threat. The decision sprang from a newfound clarity, a recognition that she could no longer afford to underestimate the danger that lay beyond. Are you sure that's wise? Jess's concern knit her brow, but the steadiness in Sarah's demeanor seemed to momentarily assuage her fears. We don't have a choice, Sarah replied, resolute. A part of her understood the necessity of the risk. Confronting the unknown was no longer a matter of bravery, but survival. She gestured for them to remain alert, to gear up for anything that might emerge. I'll be back before you even have time to blink. Just be careful, John said, his voice a quiet blend of worry and admiration. As she moved toward the staircase, a shroud of anticipation enveloped her, the howling wind now a mere backdrop to the pulse of her heart. Each creak of the old wood beneath her felt accusatory, challenging her resolve. Doubts flickered at the edges of her mind. What if she was overstepping? What if she miscalculated their precarious situation? But just as quickly, she recognized these fears as remnants of an identity she was shedding. This wasn't the girl who hesitated to voice an opinion. This was a leader in the making, thrust into a crucible where her growth would be measured in actions rather than intentions. Reaching the door to the attic, she paused, hand resting on the cool knob, her breath crystallizing in the frigid air. The stories whispered around campfires, about haunted attics, the unknown lurking in shadows, flashed through her mind. The myth echoed with her visceral fear, yet she inhaled deeply, grounding herself in the reality of the situation. No entity could be more frightening than the uncertainty her group was living. Pushing the door open, she was met with a darkness that seemed to swallow her whole. Heart pounding, she stepped inside, intent on uncovering the truth. Faint light filtered through a cracked window, illuminating a space cluttered with forgotten relics, each a testimony to a life that once thrived here. As she scanned the room, minute by minute, she instinctively began to catalog the items. A rusting old trunk, dusty books stacked haphazardly, and framed photographs whose contents had faded into obscurity. Yet beneath the debris, her gaze was drawn to a shifting shape at the far corner, movement hidden among the clutter. Chills raced down her spine, but she approached it as if guided by an invisible thread pulling her deeper into the unknown. She wrestled with the urge to turn back but pressed forward, curiosity mingling with her instinct for preservation. It was then that she noticed, hidden beneath an array of boxes, a length of silk rope, frayed at the edges as though it had been yanked harshly in desperation. Her pulse quickened. What did it mean? In a moment of clarity, the realization struck her. It was a tool, perhaps part of a larger puzzle yet to be revealed, a possible lifeline amidst terror. A loud crash shook the cabin, pulling her from her contemplation, snapping her back into focus. She turned, breath hitching, only to find no one behind her. It was deafeningly silent again, and the need to return to her friends surged within her. She couldn't abandon this newfound insight, but the weight of the moment pushed her instinct to flee. Feeling the urgency rise, Sarah quickly obtained the rope, its history now hers to command. As she maneuvered back through the attic door, a sudden thought struck her. Perhaps this small fragment of the past could be the bridge to their survival, a tool for binding together both literal and metaphorical threads of their fraying group. Securing the door behind her, she took a deep breath to steady her racing heart. Exiting the attic, she could sense a tense energy filling the air. The others were on edge, mirroring her heightened determination, ready for her next instruction. But as she stepped back into the room, a shadow skittered past the window. Time slowed as dread replaced resolution, and a whisper of an entirely different kind of fear crawled up her spine. It seemed this cabin held far more secrets than she had prepared for. Would this tiny discovery provide the leverage she needed, or would it amplify the terror that was already at their doorstep? The walls seemed to close in, and Sarah braced herself for the reality of what lay ahead. Could she harness the remnants of the past to navigate through the storm about to break? Every decision now felt monumental as she stared into the darkness. The time for understanding the power within her was slipping away, screaming for an answer. The storm raged outside, its fury unparalleled, mirroring the tempest within Sarah. Standing in the cabin, the weight of the moment pressed heavily upon her. She held the frayed rope, its fibers whispering tales of survival, of struggles perhaps long forgotten. But now, it was a catalyst, an embodiment of resilience she could channel for both herself and her friends, symbolizing the connection between sacrifice and hope. "Gather around," she called, her voice commanding attention despite the chaos lurking beyond the walls. Her friends, weary yet beleaguered with anticipation, turned to meet her gaze. In their eyes, she saw reflections of fear and belief, the duality intertwining, an acknowledgement that survival hinged not only on physical strength but also on collective resolve. With the rope in hand, she felt a surge of empowerment swell within her. "This can help us. We need to create a secure shelter here, reinforcing the barricade while we figure twofold strategies for any impending breaches," she instructed. Mentally, she began strategizing the layout, her thoughts zipping into action, transforming fear into calculated steps. "Sarah, are you sure this rope will hold?" John asked, doubt lingering in his tone as he stepped closer, assessing the precarious situation. "It's not just about the rope. It's about us, our commitment to each other. Every push we make will count," she asserted, feeling the resolve firming in her voice. "If we can lash the doors and windows together, we can stabilize our defenses." The practicality of her plan spread like wildfire through their ranks, their initial hesitations evaporating in the glowing embers of urgency. They moved with a fervor now, unified by their growing belief in the possibilities their efforts could yield. As limbs intertwisted to knot the rope, Sarah guided them, feeling her leadership solidify, the emerging authority no longer foreign, but comforting. In the frantic rush to prepare, every movement stitched a thread of solidarity into their shared experience. The weight of previous failures loosened. She felt the constraints of her self-doubt giving way to a collective power that surged as they harnessed every resource available. The cabin transformed around them, a sanctuary, fortified not just by wood and stone, but by the unyielding will of the people it housed. Just then, a deafening crash reverberated through the air, jolting them from their concentration. The stack of snow piled against the door shifted ominously, an ominous reminder of the unresolved threat outside. "Positions!" Sarah yelled, urgency igniting her words, thrusting them into action once more. They swiftly checked their makeshift barricade, the tension palpable as anticipation coiled tighter within them. As they secured the last knotted rope, she felt a flicker of pride rally within her. It wasn't just about buckling down against the snow. She had become a part of something larger. Through the cacophony of their impending fight, Sarah caught John's gaze, his relief slowly morphing to admiration. In a world flooded with uncertainty, they had formed a bulwark. She nodded, conveying a silent promise that together, they could withstand even the fiercest storms. Outside, the winds howled louder, and fragments of snow began breaching the cabin's edges, curling along the windowsill like angry tendrils seeking entry. "Stay vigilant. If it breaks through, we divert, And if anyone's hurt, we tend to them. No hesitation, she instructed firmly, each command steadying her as uncertainty clashed with courage. With every shriek of the wind, Sarah felt her confidence swell, anchored by the collective spirit of her friends. They had moved beyond their fears. They now functioned as a cohesive unit, each member contributing to their survival through active participation. Then, just as the barricade held firm against the pounding elements, Sarah felt a shift, an empowering surge of purpose that could only come from confronting the abyss together. We are stronger than the doom that surrounds us. The storm doesn't define us. Our response does. Hearing her own declaration resonated within her. A moment of clarity crystallized the distance she had traveled. This was a far cry from the uncertain woman who had initially battled her way to aid Buck. She had faced her darkness and emerged radiant in resilience. The worries of her financial troubles and her son's health morphed into fierce determination. Each decision she made now stretched into the future, a fusion of responsibility, interlaced with relentless courage. As the aggression of the storm intensified, she stood firm, embodying the strength she had unearthed, shielded by the fortifications that had become a symbol of her growth. Together, they were a testament of hope, each person fortified in purpose. With one last glance around, she knew the coming waves would test them further. Yet among the onslaught of shadows, she welcomed the challenge. No longer would she waver in her commitment. They would weather this storm. "Hold tight," was the last thing Sarah said, but it held an unyielding power. In that moment, she hadn't just affirmed her leadership. She had proven to herself that she was capable, deserving of every triumphant breath among the swirling chaos. In the cacophony that ensued, Sarah's metamorphosis lingered like the ever-brightening horizon after a storm. She wasn't just a participant in this struggle. She was born into it, reborn through it, and ready to face whatever was to come. This would be her moment, one she would never forget. And as the avalanche threatened to roll through, she awaited the consequences of their determination, finally embracing the future. Now was the time for her to revel in that strength, forever altered, yet solid. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.